Do you have any bids from CD?
Didn't get a text from it, so.
I guess, well, I think Joanna will go up because we have a forum. All right, thank you everyone for coming and welcome to the Milburn Township Charter Study Commission meeting for March 19th, 2026. Probably Joanna walking in the front door. I can hear it now. I'll just give her a second to walk in. Yep, all right. We're just getting started, so while you're up, we might as well stand and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeremy.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Dr. Kong is here, Ms. Parker Lentz,
Here?
Mr. Jenna,
Here.
Mr. Drucker. Mr. Drucker is absent. I note we also have Suzanne Spasco, you mentioned Collins, and Greg Poff of the Township of Randolph in attendance.
All right. Dr. Kong distributed the agenda prior to our meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
A motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed. Dr. Kong also distributed the minutes from the March 12th, 2026 meeting. We did receive some feedback and revisions from the interviewees. Everyone else get any revisions that they needed? All right, motion to approve.
Motion?
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Go. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, no opposed. Does any of the commissioners have any reports?
Before we do that, I'd like to make a motion to approve invoice 96519 from King Mansion Collins for $3,870 for legal services rendered through February 28th.
And I'll note that Dr. Kong also distributed that for review prior to the meeting. Does anyone have any comments?
I do not.
All right, motion to approve.
I'll motion that.
All right, second.
Second.
Any opposed? We'll just go that way. Hearing none, it's approved. All right, now to reports. Do any of the commissioners have reports?
I think what we're gonna hear tonight would be part of our reports if we had one to give, because we thought this was so important for the community to hear, so thank you for, the next portion of it.
I will say, I don't have much to report other than I reached out to another community organization, the South Mountain Civic Association, to advertise both this meeting and the meeting on Sunday, because we'd like to encourage as much community participation as possible. Have not seen them actually take my posting and make it, but I am not on Facebook, so it's possible that they posted on Facebook, but I did not get an email, so hopefully that will at least be done before Sunday's community meeting, because we encourage all community members to come and participate, and please, we want your voices heard. So that's it for me.
Nothing for me.
Okay, so we're going to move on to public comment. If anyone from the public would like to speak, whether people who are here or virtual, please ensure that your Zoom display for virtual shows your name, your first and your last name. Click raise your hand button when the public comment is announced, which is now. You'll be called upon in order and promoted to panelist. Turn on your video and call to speak. Clearly state your name, your full name, whether you are a Milburn resident or business owner, and to facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The commissioners have in the past responded to comments and questions, but we tend to do that and wait till the end of comments to address them all. So if there's anyone in the room who would like to make a comment, now is the time.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Ben Forrest, Red Bank. I can make a comment later after the speaker speaks, correct?
Yes, and we're gonna
Just
have a
want to
public
make sure
comment
I'm reading the
after.
agenda correctly.
Yep.
Right, I will make a comment at that time.
Is there anyone online that would like to make a comment?
Anyone online wishing to speak, may raise your hand now.
Okay, hearing none, we will close the first public comment. We'll have another one after our old business. We will start old business with an interview, and our interview will be with Randolph's town manager, Greg Poff. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We are excited to hear from you and appreciate your contribution to our study.
My pleasure.
All right. I will, if it's okay with you, Greg, I will start with a background description of your experience. Greg brings more than 25 years of experience as a local government manager in New Jersey. Throughout his career, Mr. Poff has served 4 local governments, most recently as the Sussex County Administrator. In his current role as Township Manager, he serves as the Township's Chief Executive Officer, leading and supervising day-to-day operations. Mr. Poff is one of only 5 practicing local government managers in New Jersey recognized as credentialed manager by the International City-County Management Association. This prestigious credential reflects a combination of education, experience, adherence to high standards of integrity, and demonstrated commitment to professional judgment. In 2019, the New Jersey Municipal Management Association honored Mr. Poff with the Dr. Thomas J. Davey Academic Achievement Award for his work in the development and implementing training programs for newly elected officials and for lecturing on New Jersey local government. A Morris County native, Mr. Poff earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Policy and Management Studies from Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and a Master of Public Administration degree from the Department of Public Policy and Administration at Rutgers University, Camden. I feel like we should then confirm him as an expert witness here.
And before we do that, I should note, I think Mr. Poff is coming out of a Randolph Council meeting tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is again amazing to me.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
Like from last week.
we did this last week where we interviewed council people from Red Bank, and they were coming from a council meeting that they had. So I just am curious, what time did your meeting start today that you're able to join us at 8 o'clock?
Our meeting started at 6 o'clock, and this evening the agenda was a bit light, so the Randolph Township Council may have set a record as the meeting adjourned just a little bit after 20 after 6.
That makes me even more interested to hear what you have to say and how you operate.
If I may, I would just say efficiently.
And I appreciate that. So in addition to what I've described, is there anything else you can walk us through regarding your career in municipal management, the communities you've served and the different governing structures you've worked under? If you can give us a little description chronologically, I suppose would be easiest.
Yes, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening and to be able to share my experience in local government. I started my career at the end of my public service career at the end of 1999, serving as the assistant township manager in Randolph. So I've come full circle. My first assignment managing a community was in Byram Township. And Byram Township, I served as the township manager under a council manager form of government. In Byram Township, the mayor is directly elected, and there are 5 council members, including the mayor. I served Byram Township for about 3.5 years when I moved on to serve as the business administrator in Rockaway Township. And I was appointed business administrator under a mayor and council form of government. There, the mayor, serving as the chief executive, is directly elected, and there are 9 council members. So a total of 10 elected officials, 9 council members, 3 at large, 6 wards, and an elected mayor. I was in Rockaway for about 10 years when I then had an opportunity to serve as the Sussex County Administrator. That follows a county board of commissioners format. The board selects a director similar to what would be in municipal government as a council president. And there were a total of 5 members on the Sussex County Board of Commissioners. I then returned to Randolph Township. I served 5 years as Sussex County Administrator. I then returned to Randolph Township, where I have now served almost 4 years as the Township Manager, again under a council manager form of government. There, as distinguished by Byram, the mayor is selected by the Township Council, and there are a total of 7 members on the Randolph Township Council.
So it sounds like you've had experience with different forms of government, but a lot of it has been the council manager form. Have you had a generally positive experience with the council manager form of government?
Yes, I would characterize my experiences as very favorable. It's interesting because as a township manager, the township manager serves as the chief executive officer, as contrasted with a business administrator or township administrator's position, which typically is a chief administrative officer. The primary difference has to do with the appointment, management, and ultimately discipline and or termination of town employees. So serving both in Byram Township and Randolph Township, I served as the chief executive, having day-to-day responsibilities for those organizations. And essentially all of the employees, with the exception of the township clerk, worked for me.
What do you see about the council manager form of government? What aspects do you think make it work so well?
I mentioned before, just as a joke, but it's really serious, is efficiency and effectiveness. That is where I find the real strength of the council manager form of government. The core strengths: administrative competence, professional management, fiscal accountability, and operational stability, are not merely just ideas, but in fact are manifest across the outcomes based upon my experience that are much more challenging, if not impossible, to achieve under other forms of government. A recent example of this in Randolph illustrates this well. The Township Council had expressed an interest in reconfiguring the way our engineering services group was managed, desiring to look at alternatives to the consulting engineering way in which they were having their engineering services managed. I prepared a report to the Township Council outlining some possibilities of how I saw that could be accomplished, with the recommendation of bringing on a full-time engineer, which Randolph Township had many years ago. And then I went through a process for interviewing potential engineers, which included a structured interview process. I convened a interview panel because this represented a significant shift for how the township was going to handle its engineering work. And I was able to draw upon not only my experience, but other professional engineers who have served in the capacity of municipal engineers to participate in that process. And then based upon that, I was able to report back to the council that we had found a suitable candidate, and I extended an offer of employment to that individual. And I would say that the council has been very pleased with the hiring of its now full-time township engineer. But that process was done. A township engineer is a high-profile position and could have been subject to political influence. Council members expressing opinions or trying to influence ultimately how that decision was going to be made, which you might find working with a directly elected mayor or a strong mayor in mayor-council form of government. But the township council was very clear. They had established a preferred direction by way of policy, and then they allowed me to proceed with the implementation of that and ultimately the hiring of the township engineer. And I believe that the separation between the policy and the administration in a council manager form of government doesn't provide just good governance, but it produces better outcomes for residents.
So, okay, so you did mention one of the conditions, that separation is what makes it work well. With respect to the efficiency and effectiveness, in particular, what structural components do you feel result in that or foster the effectiveness and efficiency? Are there any structural guardrails or aids?
Well, it's something that I've said when people have asked me to contrast the role of the township manager in this form of government as compared to serving as an administrator in a different form. The efficiency and the effectiveness, I believe, comes from the fact that the township manager has a tremendous amount of authority. And that also then serves as its greatest challenge, is the township manager has a lot of authority. I believe that when there is an understanding and the community, including the governing body, embraces the form of government, that is when it succeeds. There is a level of role clarity, which I alluded to before, policy versus administration. There is a professional hiring process in hiring the manager, and then a willingness on the part of the governing body to let the manager manage the day-to-day operations.
So what are some of the risks that pose a threat to the council manager structure?
I believe that specific risks would include micromanagement by council members, political interference in personnel decisions, or just general governing body dysfunction.
Have you seen, because presumably a lot of that is personality wise. I don't know if and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like structurally there's nothing that would prevent those divisiveness or politics. In your career, have you seen a steady state, or have you seen situations where even in a council manager structure, there's been politicking or divisiveness?
Not in the assignments that I've had, though I certainly am aware of other council manager forms of government other than Randolph, where the understanding and the embracing of the form of government may not be universal among either the community, the governing body, and even sometimes deficiencies on the part of the town manager, him or herself. And that's when you can find some of this divisiveness and really undermining what the underpinnings are of the council manager form of government.
So when things do go wrong, to the extent they've gone wrong, who's held accountable? Is it the council or the manager? Both?
Well, that's a good question, and that really would depend upon what the particular challenge was. If it's a breakdown in the administration of the organization, then it is the obligation of the township council to raise that with the township manager and seek resolution. If there are instances where the governing body is interfering with the day-to-day operations of the township manager's office or the organization more generally, then it's the manager's obligation to work with the governing body to point out where those deficiencies exist and work with the governing body to see those things corrected. And there are times, and certainly have been times throughout my career, where the council has expressed its desire to see a policy implemented consistent with what its intent was. And that's not to say that they're micromanaging, but clearly establishing or redefining what those expectations are relative to legislative intent. And then there are times that I have raised an issue where I feel that the governing body has overstepped in terms of their interaction with the administrative organization, and ask that my role be respected in that regards. And I have to say, in both of those scenarios, the resolutions have been positive.
Given the authority that you described that the council, the manager has, do you find that residents, it's clear to residents if they have an issue who to go to, whether it's the council or the manager?
Well, and that's where I really feel Randolph particularly excels, because I will hear in the presence of council people dealing with constituents, direct referral to me, assuring the residents that their concerns will be heard and properly acted upon. And so, even being present and hearing that, I know that that is the case then even when I'm not present, and will receive phone calls from residents and others doing business with the township, saying that they were referred by a township council member to my office to have a particular concern addressed. And then, I, along with the administrative organization, will work towards addressing whatever that issue is. And then the converse is when you have residents who will call and express certain issues about policies that the township council has adopted, I will simply tell them that while I remain available to assist them through whatever issues they may have, that the issue that they've raised is of a policy nature and is better directed back to their elected officials.
Actually, I think that answer segues very well into Commissioner Parker Lentz's set of questions right now. So I will now hand it over to her.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. So to move this forward, how does the relationship between the council and the administrative organization work in Randolph?
So the council must act as a body and may only deal with the administrative services solely through the office of the township manager. And that's very important to understand. Again, the governing body acting as a body, so it's the majority of the township council that is able to establish policy, not individual council people, and not even the mayor, who effectively under this form of government serves as the chair of the council. Council members are, in fact, by law prohibited from directing subordinates of the township manager. In order to make all of this work, I provide and present written manager reports to the township council twice a month, as I did earlier this evening, which outlines the status of various administrative matters so that everybody is kept apprised of what's going on in town. The township council then will refer policy matters to council work groups, which consist in Randolph of 3 council members, so as not to trigger any Open Public Meetings Act issue, but allows them then to do a deep dive on whatever the policy matters are that they wish to discuss. And I will provide administrative support as appropriate. To give you a few examples of the work groups that they use, they have used a land use work group, which most recently dealt with a lot of the affordable housing issues that ultimately came before the township council. There's been a particular emphasis on improving communications with residents. And so there's a communications work group where our communications director will be present to provide a report and address some of the items presented by the township council or the work group members. And then also an ordinance work group when If either I, through my department heads, have a particular ordinance that needs amending, or if the council has an idea for a new ordinance to be considered, they will refer that for review or even actual drafting at the ordinance work group level. And then ultimately, with that information coming back to the full council for further discussion, deliberation, and ultimately adoption, if the body chooses to do so.
Thank you for that. So moving on to the next question. I don't know if I guess you probably do after our last meeting. Milburn currently has a business administrator whose position was created by ordinance. How does that differ from a township manager operating under the Faulkner Act in terms of authority and accountability?
So, as you point out, the Milburn administrator is created by local ordinance, and the business administrator serves as the chief administrative officer overseeing the day-to-day operations. In contrast, the township manager is established by state statute and serves as the chief executive officer of the organization. And so many of you that would be involved with business would have an understanding of the difference between a CEO and a CAO. The statutory authority gives the manager defined removal protections, clearer separation of powers, and a legally structured chain of command. An ordinance-created administrator serves entirely at the governing body's pleasure with no independent statutory standing.
So you've managed under governing bodies of different sizes. For a municipality like Milburn, which is around 21,000 residents, what's your view on 5 members versus 7?
Having worked with governing bodies of 5, 7, and 9, I am of the opinion that 5 is the most efficient. 7 is manageable, and 9 is particularly challenging.
Okay. From the manager's chair, does the size of the governing body change how you operate from day to day?
Yes, it does. The larger the governing body, the more time is required simply to keep members informed. And that time is an operational resource to me. Without a designated primary point of contact, whether that's the mayor, council president, or director, depending on the form of government, communication demands multiply with each additional member. Electronic communication certainly has helped, but that hasn't eliminated the challenge of having to engage with the elected members, depending upon the number of elected members that you have.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
You mentioned 5 as the most efficient number and 7 as manageable. I assume you're saying that from the manager's perspective, just putting a council person's hat on, it also, if you have a 5-member body, it means that the work groups have to be a 2-member work group as opposed to a 3-member council work group that's possible with a 7-member body. Do you think that 2 versus 3 distinction for a work group or subcommittee matters for the council's efficiency?
That's a good question. When I served as township manager in Byram with 5 council members, they did not use a work group format. Much of the work that otherwise would have been done in a work group setting was left for the council to deliberate as a whole. That placed some more responsibility on me working with the town attorney, particularly in drafting ordinances. But as opposed to referring those to a work group to be developed, they would be developed with some input from the governing body and then returned back to the body as a whole.
Okay, so I assume you can't say whether it's efficient or not for the council, but it makes a difference in how some policy matters are potentially handled.
That is correct.
Thank you for
So
that.
just teeing off of that actually is, do you think the council manager form of government with the manager having a executive function is what lends itself to allowing for a smaller council versus if you have a business administrator who's not a CEO, could you see that a larger body, whether it's 7 or 9, would have its benefits? I'm just wondering if your opinion on the size, the smaller size, it might be framed by the fact that you have a manager who's a CEO role.
I don't know if that would be the case. When you have an administrator, and as you know, I have not worked in a pure township form as a local ordinance administrator. My experience serving as a business administrator was under a mayor council form, and so that operated very differently because there the mayor served as the chief executive with the business administrator serving as the chief administrative officer. So I don't know if I could speak to that directly. What I would suggest you would have to give some thought to, and I don't know how Millburn conducts its business, whether Millburn utilizes work groups or not, or much of that, what I've described, being referred to a work group is just simply handled as part of the public meetings of the township committee. It certainly would be something to give consideration to. I believe that the efficiency and the effectiveness has more to do with the embracing and understanding of the form of government as opposed to necessarily the number of elected officials.
Thank you. I'm going to now pass over to Dr. Kung to follow up with some of his own questions.
Great. Thanks again for joining us this evening. I'm going to focus a little on the selection of the mayor in a council manager form. So we've interviewed municipalities with directly elected mayors and others where the council selects the mayor from among themselves. What's your perspective on those two approaches within the council manager form?
I believe that the self-selection of the mayor by the governing body is preferable. In a council manager form, the mayor's role is fundamentally one of leadership within the governing body, presiding, facilitating, and serving as the primary point of contact with the manager, not executive administration. When the mayor is directly elected, it can create confusion about where policy authority resides and blur that critical distinction between the council's role to establish policy and the manager's role to implement it. Self-selection reinforces the principle that the governing body acts as a body, with the manager accountable to that body as a whole, rather than to a single elected executive.
How does the mayor selection process work in Randolph, and does it create any complications?
The mayor is selected by the entire governing body on an annual basis, and I am not aware of, nor have I observed, any complications as a result of that selection process.
Great. How do residents typically understand the mayor's role in a council manager form? And does that method of selection affect the understanding of the mayor's role?
In the case of Randolph, the residents understand the mayor's role. That is a function of the governing body's embracing the council manager form of government. The township council will direct constituents to the township manager concerning operational matters, and the annual rotation of that position of mayor reinforces the council as a body concept.
Great. I'm going to turn a little to term length and elections. So Milburn currently has annual elections under the Township Committee form of government. Randolph has elections every 2 years. In your view, how does holding elections every other year impact governance and accountability?
Holding elections every other year, in my opinion, is preferred. My experience bears out that that election cycle of every other year allows for better governance as the result of members not constantly seeking re-election.
And Randolph uses 4-year terms with staggered elections every 2 years. Is there a meaningful difference between concurrent versus staggered elections from your perspective?
I believe that the staggered elections are necessary to preserve institutional knowledge and also allow for seated members to share their experience and understanding of local government, including how the form of government operates.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Towna.
Sure. I'll focus a little on supposedly everyone's favorite topic, partisan versus non-partisan elections. Am I correct in understanding that you worked for municipalities, some with partisan and some with non-partisan elections, so you've had experience with both?
That is correct.
Great. So in your experience, does the election structure make a difference in terms of who gets elected, how public discourse is conducted, and how the municipality is governed?
In my experience, the election structure does influence the candidate pool and public discourse, though perhaps less so actual governance. Nonpartisan elections tend to attract candidates who are more community focused than issue driven, and public discourse tends to center on local concerns rather than state or national narratives. That said, I have observed that the absence of a party label does not necessarily mean the absence of a partisan framework among those who are elected.
That kind of leads into my next question there. I think you're stating that it doesn't keep the partisan framework aside. But in your experience, which format better describes how elected officials approach municipal issues? Meaning, are they approaching them with a party hat on once they're elected in a partisan framework? Or does it not matter once they are elected, they're talking about local issues no matter what?
In my experience, both are simultaneously true. Elected officials may carry partisan instincts, but when the actual work of local governance, setting a tax rate, funding a capital project, negotiating affordable housing requirements, those instincts rarely map cleanly to the decision at hand. Local officials tend to be practical rather than ideological. In my observation, local officials who arrived with strong partisan identities generally governed on the merits once they understood what the job actually entailed.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So just the last couple of questions as we close the questions. In your view, over long term, what are the most important factors in making the council manager form work well? And I know you've alluded to a few factors before. If you could just summarize that for us, what are the most important factors making that format work well?
Sure. Everything that we've discussed tonight points to a few enduring facts. First is role clarity. The governing body must understand and embrace its policymaking role, and the manager must be empowered to administer without interference. And I also want to say that the role of the township manager requires that manager to do that. My mentor, who I worked for about 4.5 years, told me something as I was looking to get started in this profession. And he said, many people can serve as administrators, very few can serve as township managers. And having served in multiple roles, including that of business administrator, county administrator, and township manager, his words to me have borne out to be true. So there certainly are responsibilities in terms of the governing body, understanding what its role is as a policy-making group, but it's also very important for the individual who is given the responsibility and the authority to manage the day-to-day operations to do so consistent with the statute. The professional hiring process that I talked about before is also another important factor in the council manager form of government, being able to be insulated from political pressure for personnel decisions. Third, the governing body discipline. Members who act as a body, direct the organization through the manager, and resist the impulse to micromanage. And finally, institutional continuity, which is really where I think Randolph Township has been exceptional. Staggered terms, experienced members mentoring new ones, and a manager who provides consistent administrative leadership across political transitions. When all of these elements are present simultaneously, the council manager form consistently outperforms other structures. When any one of those breaks down, the form is vulnerable regardless of what the charter says.
I just want to ask you, follow up, what process did the Randolph Council follow when choosing a township manager? What process did you have to go through? Did they hire a search firm? Did they just write applications? And were they interviews? How were the interviews conducted? Was it council as a whole interviewing you? Was it a certain committee or subcommittee of the council? If you could just shed some light on that.
I would be happy to. Randolph Township, through three township managers. The first was my mentor. When he retired, then his successor, and then when I was hired, the township council relied upon a search firm to conduct that search. Most recently, when I was hired, there was a subset of the township council designated as the manager search work group, who was the primary interface with the search firm principal and conducted the first round of interviews with the search firm. And once the finalists were identified through that process, then the finalists were brought in for interviews with the entire township council.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You mentioned mentorship as something that you experience in Randolph Township when there's a transition. And I was wondering if that mentorship happens organically, or are there any structural elements that lend themselves to mentorship?
Well, in fact, in Randolph, it's structural, and that is the position of the assistant township manager. So there are a number of us who had started our careers in public service as Randolph assistant managers. Unfortunately, with the Great Recession, the assistant manager position was eliminated in 2010. When I was hired in July of 2022, and I started evaluating where the organization was administratively and our administrative capabilities and capacities, I concluded that the position of the assistant township manager really should be restored so as to increase the capacity that my office would have to meet the expectations of the governing body as well as the demands of the township residents. Coincidentally, not only had I served as assistant township manager, but my predecessor had served as an assistant township manager, I believe 2 or 3 assistant managers before me. And so Randolph Township has enjoyed great success through having assistant township managers who have been trained by the Randolph Township manager and then have gone on to have careers in New Jersey local government. I know that concern that was expressed from time to time by prior councils was if the township is bearing the cost of these assistant managers and these assistant managers are leaving, anywhere from, 2 to 4 years. And there's something of a cycle, isn't Randolph Township, in fact, subsidizing local government throughout New Jersey? And the answer to that, quite simply, is no. Randolph is not doing that because each of the assistant township managers have had their own portfolio of meaningful work that was done. My particular portfolio happened to be open space acquisitions, where over the course of about my 4+ years with Randolph, was able to preserve over 1,000 acres of open space. Fast forward now, it's hard to believe, 20, 25 years later, as the township is addressing its 4th round obligations, the reason Randolph Township had such a small RDP was as a result of the township mothers and fathers' decision to preserve open space, and that was work that I had done for that community a quarter of a century ago. So that's the structural capacity of mentorship in Randolph Township that I believe has contributed greatly to professional local government management in New Jersey. And I have had, since restoring that position, I have had 2 assistant township managers. The first one left and went into the private sector. And now I currently have an assistant manager who I anticipate will continue to serve in New Jersey local government.
Thank you. You've been super clear and concise in your answers. I really appreciate that. Is there anything from your experience that you think our commission should be weighing that we haven't covered tonight?
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for having me and allowing me to be able to share my experience with you. The form of government and the work that you are charged as a charter commission is extremely important work. And I appreciate the thoughtful questions that you've provided me with this evening, and I wish you all the best with your deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Pop. We appreciate it as well. You are, more than welcome to continue to stay on, or if you'd like to drop off. We understand you already had a council meeting and now this, so we understand if you want to drop off, but you are welcome to stay on.
Public ask questions.
Yeah, actually, we're sure. I was going to say we're going to talk about.
Don't mind.
We can, yeah, that's fine. We can. I mean, I think I already talked about community outreach anyway in the meeting on Sunday. Does anyone have? I'll just take care of that. We'll go to public comment and then you can ask questions. Does anyone else have anything about community outreach? Okay. All right. So then we will move to the public comment section so that anyone from the public can ask Mr. Possa questions. As I indicated earlier, if you are on Zoom, please ensure that your Zoom display name shows first and last name. Click the raise hand button when public comment is announced. Now, you will be called upon in order and promoted to panelists. Please turn on your video when called to speak and clearly state your full name and whether you are a Millburn resident or business owner or other. To facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard, we will generally restrict you to 3 minutes, although given that we do not have a large turnout, we can be flexible on that. We will generally wait until after all public comment to address anything from the public. I now open it up to public for comment.
Yes, so I had, sorry, Frank Sacamandi, resident. So I had a question for Mr. Pop. So even though most township issues are nonpartisan, have you ever seen partisanship get in the way of the governing body conducting its business?
I don't know if I could say that I've seen partisanship keeping a governing body from doing its business, because you have to keep in mind there will be a majority and a minority. I have found that from time to time to be extremely disruptive, particularly during meetings. Ultimately, a question will be called, a vote will be held, and a decision made. So, other than maybe some political theater, ultimately the body will conduct its business. It's just sometimes those decisions or the deliberation leading up to that decision, might be more interesting than in a partisan setting than in a nonpartisan setting.
Follow-up question. So you've worked for townships that have both partisan and nonpartisan forms of government, correct? Or elections, rather?
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
That's
So,
correct.
in the case where you have governments that have nonpartisan elections, have you found that the individuals on the council tend to work, better or worse with each other? Or do they, are they more inclined to cross party lines? Or, have you seen, basically a benefit of the nonpartisan elections in terms of the quality of governance that comes?
Well, again, my experience has been that even in a nonpartisan form, people come with their partisan ideals, even if they have not been, even if they've not campaigned on such things. And so, I have found spirited debate among nonpartisan elected body, just as I've seen spirited debate amongst the partisan councils that I've served. As I'd said earlier, I'm just not sure that partisanship necessarily overlays particularly well or is particularly meaningful when you're talking about issues of local governance.
Okay, another question. So when you've had townships you've worked for where they've had partisan and versus nonpartisan, and you might not know the answer to this, but have you seen a difference in the amount of money that tends to get spent during the election cycle by the candidates get elected? Are people spending more or less money if it's a partisan election versus a nonpartisan election? Or have you not necessarily noticed that, or maybe you haven't looked at elect, I don't know.
I can tell you I have no experience with that whatsoever. And if I may, just sort of to follow up, that is one area of municipal operations that I freely admit to not knowing anything about. Elections are handled through the township clerk's office and then the county board of elections. And as a nonpartisan employee and nonpartisan township manager, local elections are nothing that I have taken a particular interest in, including looking at elect reports and what money's spent.
So another question. So you talked a little bit about the council manager, being done by statute, the power of the manager by statute versus, what we have now, where our business administrator is by ordinance. Have you found that in townships that have the council manager form, that the manager has, either more or less independence from the committee, and I'll maybe phrase this a little bit differently. So, we've heard that in the past that sometimes what can happen with business administrator is that if you've got, a majority on the township committee, for instance, that strongly feel one way, they can apply pressure to the business administrator to, not only enact that policy, but not speak their mind against it when a bad decision is being made. Do you have more protection for the manager under the council manager format versus business administrator, which essentially the majority of the TC could remove them, right? Are there other added benefits to you as the manager under, one form versus the other?
So I can't speak to serving as a business administrator in the township form of government that Millburn has, because I just have not served in that capacity. The business administrator position that I had in Rockaway Township was in fact a statutory administrator under the mayor council form of government. So it was not defined by local ordinance. When you say that there would be township council or township committee people that would apply pressure to the administrator to not speak, ultimately, if a majority of the township committee were to provide direction, in as much as it's a policy direction, then the administrator is under an obligation to effectuate that, irrespective of what the administrator's position might be on that. The same is true for a township manager. While the individual council members do not enjoy any authority individually, they speak, they speak strongly and with authority when they speak as a majority. And so both the local ordinance administrator as well as the township manager, I serve at the pleasure of the Randolph Township Council. I do not have a particular term. When the majority of the council thank me for my service, then it's time for me to go. There are certain statutory protections in terms of severance and such that the statute allows for. But I would imagine, in having looked rather quickly at your local ordinance establishing the office of the administrator, much of what he does or is responsible to do complement what I am required to do under the statute.
Can I ask a follow-up there, if you don't mind, because you were questioning? Does the council as a body seek your opinion on any policy matters?
They have.
Okay.
And I will say that the first thing that I say to them is, this is really a policy matter. But then, and to their credit, really, they say, but you've had, much for the reason why I'm here speaking to you this evening. The response is, you've seen a lot. You've been in different types of government. I managed the township of Rockaway through the Great Recession, and I managed Sussex County through the pandemic. So I certainly have a tremendous amount of experience in regards to seeing policy being implemented, making recommendations relative to any number of items that I'm asked to report on and provide alternatives to the governing body. And so long as they understand that, if I'm to provide them with some suggestions or recommendations, I do so at their request, but fully recognize that ultimately that responsibility rests with them. And quite frankly, I'm flattered when they ask, but I do make it very clear that that is outside of my authority. But I certainly am more than happy, as evidence this evening, to share my experience with anyone who asks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Leave the floor back to you.
Right here.
I'm finished. Thank you.
Anyone else in the
Sure, you
room?
want it. Hi, I'm Jeff Feld. I just want to follow up, saying that you serve at the pleasure of the township committee. You do not have a contract, a term contract?
I have a memorandum of understanding that outlined the terms and conditions under which I was hired. It is not an employment agreement. I do serve at the pleasure of the township council. That's pursuant to statute. In contrast, when I served as the administrator in Rockaway Township under the mayor council form, that position actually does have a set term, and the administrator in that form of government serves the term of the mayor who appointed the administrator. So in Rockaway, I served in 4-year terms and had to be subsequently reappointed. First, I had to be nominated by or renominated by the mayor, and then confirmed by the consent of the township council in that form. So, there are certainly differences between serving as a business administrator in a mayor council form and serving as township manager.
Now, do you currently receive like an annual review from the township committee?
I do receive an annual review by the township council, and yes, it is something that I'm very pleased with, having the opportunity to provide the council with a self-evaluation, which I like to believe then helps inform them as they prepare their comments. Typically in Randolph, and it's just by practice, the deputy mayor is the one that is then responsible for compiling the responses of the council members, and then presents that to me upon its compilation. And then at the end of the year, typically the last meeting of the year, the review, I go through the review with the township council in executive session.
Thank you.
Councilman Bart, did you want to?
Well, I don't have any questions for the administrator.
Okay, we're in public comment, so you can.
Okay, the Ben Forrest, 16 Locust Avenue, Red Bank, New Jersey. I'm a councilman there. It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Administrator of, what's their town?
That's Mr. Manager, but thank you.
Yes, Mr. Manager. And so I was honored to be interviewed by you all last week, and so I thought I'd come because I prefer in person to
Thank
Zoom.
you.
But I was like yourself, I was at a council meeting until about 7:30, so we couldn't get here in time for your meeting. I think that I would add about, we were talking a little bit about politics. I'm not sure which one of you were asking you a little bit about that.
About partisan versus non-partisan.
Partisan
I
and
was,
nonpartisan,
yes.
I happen to be a Democratic committee member and, it was very difficult, going to nonpartisan to partisan because we had a long tradition of being partisan. I would say that, as I said at the meeting last week, it was very popular, and I think the Democrats probably voted in the majority for it, because we don't know how people voted, but certainly nonpartisan passed overwhelmingly in Red Bank. And I think we're doing well as I went. I don't want to repeat what I said last week, but I did, there's sort of, I think, a perception among some voters, some whom I talked to, that, we want to have this kind of fair, perfect election. And while I think nonpartisan helps, it's not a fair, perfect election process. I mean, money matters. You have the ability to knock on doors. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have a full-time job. Maybe you have kids. I mean, elections are messy. You know that, I guess, because you had your own election here. And I think there's kind of this, and I kind of an independent win. And I said, I think I could probably pull it off. And I've seen it in other towns, but it is hard. It's really hard to run solo. And it's not just money either. It's skills. It really is a lot to election. I think I mentioned the legal stuff, a lot of paperwork. You have to know what you're doing. It's easy to spend and waste money. And also negative campaigning is a very dicey thing, and you get it certainly, I'm sure you guys have had it here. And if you're not, I'm gonna use it, if you're a civilian, if you're not haven't been involved in politics for a while, it's very stressful and, you know, can really just rock your world. And so I guess thought I would mention that. I really appreciated your comments. So I think you know, we have the federal government, I guess, that you share in Randolph, we now have in Red Bank. You know, and I continue, and I'm going to run again for the Democratic Committee. We do have a role. You know, we support our Democratic Committee, Democratic candidates up the ticket. You know, we don't endorse. Now, Red Bank has chosen not to endorse locally. I guess we could change that. I think one of you told me it's now legal, but we could do that. But we weren't. But you know, we haven't done that so far, and you know, so you know, the parties continue. I know the Republican committee woman, and I really loved campaigning at Republican doors, Democratic doors, and unaffiliated doors. It was really great. You know, one thing you mentioned earlier about, you know, this, we had the ordinance version in Red Bank, and we had it where the council majority changed the ordinance, and there was, I don't want to go into the details here, but basically he was disempowered because they wanted to meddle. You know, at that time I was sitting in the audience, but that happened. Just like, you know, I was sitting in the audience when in the strong mayor, I'm not a fan of the strong mayor form of government, as I said, you know, and I didn't mention, but I remember sitting there as a newspaper reporter in a city, small city in Monmouth County, where they have a strong mayor form of government. And the mayor, you know, was having a tizzy with the council members and ignoring the council members when they actually come to the meetings. Literally, I mean, they say that as a talking point, but it actually really happened. The mayor is not required to attend council meetings. It seems like madness to me. It actually is true. Which seems rather bizarre to me, and one of the reasons I advocated for the council manager form of government. Anyway, unless you have any more questions for me, I don't have any questions for your excellent speaker today.
Ben, I actually had a question for you that just came up when you're talking. Has it, during your election, this last election, did the fact that you were on the Red Bank Democratic Committee come up? Did people try to attack you for it and say, hey?
To a limited degree, although I've been in town a long time. As I may recall, I was a Board of Ed member for 19 years. And that's been nonpartisan in the state of New Jersey for a long time. But yes, it did. And in fact, everybody on the winning ticket happened to be a Democrat. Not all of them were committee members. The slated candidates that was running against us was a mix. And I think we had an unaffiliated voter running an independent campaign. So, you know, so that was how the mix, I don't remember how the other ticket, the exact who was, I think it was a couple of unaffiliated voters and mostly Democrats. Remember, Red Bank was basically more or less Democratic control for a long time. And so we had, you know, disagreements within the Democratic Party about things. And we had, you know, a rather messy primary. And as I mentioned last week, we decided to stick with our commitment for nonpartisan going forward. We did have a window, not a long window, where the Democratic mess was sort of sorted out by the voters, the primary. And, you know, the team and I was on one control of the quote Democratic committee. And, you know, there were people who said, well, Ben, you know, we don't really have to do nonpartisan after all. You know, why don't you just change your mind on that? Yeah, I know you're on the commission, you know. And, you know, we stuck with it. And I'm proud that we did that, but it was a difficult, you know, time for us. So, and also a little bit of trivia for you. I was the only person, I guess, in the state at that time who served both on a board of education and municipal body, because technically you're a municipal, you're part of the municipal government, and under state law, that's generally that's illegal, actually. But there's one exception. If you get elected to a charter study commission, if you're a school board member, you can do both. And I was the only one in the state. There you go.
There you go.
Do you know if in Red Bank, I think you mentioned the Republican Party, did they also vote to not endorse candidates? Do you know?
They didn't make any endorsement in the last cycle, but they're active in town. I know, I've talked to them in front of my house. So, and I think they were getting signatures. I thought they were going to run candidates in the last cycle, but they chose not to. So, You know, I'm not quite sure I'm not a member of the Red Bank Republican Party. So I don't really know what they're doing. So, but the Democratic Party in town remains very active at getting our assembly people and senators elected. We have Senator Gopal, and you know, we were involved. We had the governor when she was running. We had her over, you know, in Red Bank for various things, and it was in the primary. We had a whole bunch of Democratic candidates. By the way, I love your downtown. I'm so glad I came. I took a good walk. I went to the diner. Very good diner. I'm a little jealous. It's bigger and it's open late. We used to have a 24-hour kind of diner in Red Bank, but we don't anymore. I went to your bookstore and I'm a fan of
Bookstore's awesome.
a bookstore. I fired on Mark Twain, so I got quotes on Twain. The coldest winter I ever had was a summer in San Francisco.
Red Bank has a beautiful downtown too.
We do. There are downsides, you know, and one of the questions, I don't know if it was you, somebody in the audience asked, that mentioned there are partisan issues. Sure. I mean, there are issues that Democrats and Republicans disagree on, and just regular, you know, we all disagree on things. Not everything's the same, even if you're nonpartisan. I think the one that comes to mind the most to me is housing. Being one of the downsides about being in a country, but also in Red Bank, which is a very hot, we got Netflix coming next door. You know, real estate is insanely expensive, development is insanely expensive, and one of the issues that we are struggling with is affordable housing. I assume you probably have some issues like that here.
No.
Not us.
And so it is a fraught and difficult issue. Like we have New Jersey Transit with a developer who wants to, you know, has proposed some kind of train station thing near my house, actually. So probably at some point I'm gonna have to make a decision on that, and there's pilots and all the other stuff associated with that, and you don't have a lot of great choices. And we're also a very small town, smaller than you. I mean, it's not like I can just pull out $10 million and fund some 100% affordable housing project where I'd like to.
Like on a dump
We're
site?
really too small for that. What's that?
You don't want to get into it.
Right, but I'm just saying, we're really a small town, you know? And it would be very hard for me, I guess not impossible, it's not like I'm Jersey City or Elizabeth where I can fund a developer very easily. You know, and obviously, I'm sure you hear from taxpayers here about, you know, taxes. And so we have some federal housing in town, small public housing amount. And we have some affordable housing that's been built over the years. You know, and so we struggle with those issues. And I'm a big advocate. I'd love my kids to be able to stay in town. And it's an ongoing issue really for the country, not just us, you know, in local government. And I really want to do more to help, you know, making sure there's housing for everyone, not just the rich. Any more?
Well, thank you.
It's a good bookend.
Is there anyone online that would like to speak? It does not look like that. Okay, if there are not, I will close public comment. And that concludes the substantive portion of our meeting. If I have a motion, we can address.
Motion that.
All right, second. All right. Any opposed? No, all in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thanks,
Paul.
Ed.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
You're at,
Yeah.